Is it recording on your? Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Okay. Says recording has started.
Lovely. Hi, Ruth. Please tell us about yourself so we can start talking about all things sex.
It's my favorite topic. My name is Ruth. I use she and her pronouns, and I am a relationships and sex educator and a relationships and sex trainee therapist. And so I try as much as possible to be talking about sex and sexuality and diverse experiences and identities around all things to do with intimacy and relationships. I can go into more detail about my experience.
Yes, please. Tell us about your experience. Tell us about like how you came to want to specialize in sex and sexual health and wellness.
So over the last 10 years, I've been working in relationships and sex education and in gender-based violence prevention and response. And I find the topic of sex and how we experience eroticism and desire and how we connect with ourselves and other people in a sexual way to be so interesting. And I'm struck by how it's such an important part of our lives for our well-being when people talk about sexual health. And that's not just physical sexual health, which is so important, but also psychological sexual health and how that informs our sense of our identity and who we are and how our relationships function and our society. There is so much taboo and stigma and shame surrounding sexuality, so many different cultural contexts. And so I was inspired to add like psychotherapy to the work I do around sexuality, because even in mental health care, that silence and shaming and taboo and misinformation is so rife. And so clients are so often left without a space that feels safe and comfortable to talk about this really important element of their lives and well-being. And when it comes to queer folk, that is made even more acute because it's so harder to find a therapist who is like sex positive and affirming and non-judgmental and invite in discussion about these really private parts of ourselves, but to feel safe and trusting that our therapist not only is sex positive but is also like queer inclusive and queer celebratory is harder again. And so given how like mental health and sexual health difficulties are like disproportionately impact the queer community, it feels like a real like no-brainer of all of things like identify with and care about come together in the form of psychosexual therapy and working with an organization like Triangle Project in my beloved Cape Town.
Thank you. We're so we really are so excited to have you working with us. How long are you going to be at Triangle Project?
I am going to be at Triangle Project for 3 months. I am based in the UK most of the time, but I come to Cape Town where my family live and are from every year, and I've come this year to come for this chunk of time so I can do work with Triangle Project, which I'm really excited about. It's something I love. It feels funny to me what you're saying. You're excited to have me come. I'm so excited.
No, it's an amazing partnership. So thank you for considering us in kind of your options for where you wanted to do your practical placement. So you spoke about the sort of specifically about queer sexuality and how people often maybe don't approach therapy, or the therapists themselves aren't as comfortable speaking about queer sexuality. So how do you approach creating a safe space that is non-judgmental for clients, considering how people perceive sex to be or sexual health to be such a sensitive topic?
Yeah, so I find I'm often quite cautious about the term like creating a safe space, because for me, whether or not a space or a relationship feels safe is something that can you know, me telling someone I'm going to create a safe space doesn't mean that they're going to feel safe with me. And I think that it really has to be something that I like demonstrate and prove, and that is experienced with each client. And so the way I do that is around ensuring that clients feel as much as possible my genuine empowerment, that this is a collaboration, that I'm not this kind of expert who's there to like control the space and they have to do what they're told or answer all my questions or you know, one down. It can often feel like that because therapy sometimes does function like that, and the dynamic can feel like there's a real power imbalance. I'm really really sort of deliberate about cultivating a collaborative dynamic. And so I don't entitled for clients to answer my questions. I don't feel entitled to access their inner world and what's happening for them if they don't feel inclined towards sharing. And so I think that process of developing mutual trust, developing safety happens when, like, over time. It's not something that I expect clients to like walk in and just because I'm there, they feel safe, you know? And so that prioritizing of a consensual interaction. I also really, in my assessments with clients, which is a whole like list of questions to get a sense of the broader picture of how they're doing surrounding the like primary presenting problem to do with sex, I will make sure to clarify that therapy isn't a space where people have to turn up and sit still and talk and make like retain eye contact and that like classic way, that sort of stereotype. Clipboard, that actually, you know, if somebody finds it more comfortable to be like doodling or fidgeting with stuff as we're talking, or they find it easier to share their experiences by writing or by drawing, if they find that they're more comfortable like moving about, sitting on the floor, like stretch, you know, they don't, it doesn't have to be as like rigid as people have learned to expect from psychotherapeutic spaces. And that can help to kind of ease tension, and the formality of it can feel uncomfortable. I also invite feedback and check in. I am really into asking my clients how they feel in the space and making really explicit that if they feel awkward and uncomfortable and wary and overwhelmed, that that's welcome and that we can work with that. And what did they find helps to relax? What did they find is useful way of calming down? I think people often come to therapy with that sense that they have to sit there and then start like unveiling all of their like deep shameful experiences and thoughts and feelings and concerns. And if they would like to do that, of course that is welcome, but most clients don't want to do that and they don't have to. And so a big part of the safety for me is around establishing that empowerment and like consensual dynamic, so clients feel like it's not this kind of invasive thing where they have to do anything that doesn't feel comfortable.
Sure. Thank you. I mean, like people do sometimes find it really difficult in therapy and in counseling spaces to open up, right? And so it does take some trust to be built over time.
I kept many secrets from my therapist for a long time, like for sure.
Yeah, sure. All right. So the next question I want to ask you is also related, I suppose, in what linked to how you came about to be a Triangle Project, but also what specifically you would be doing over the next 3 months. So what kind of problems can people come to you with?
Great question. So psychosexual therapy is quite a broad of specialism. When people think about sexual health, often that focus kind of narrows onto like bodies, People might think about STIs or stuff to do with reproductive health, or maybe to do with like physical sexual function around orgasming or erections or ejaculation or penetration and pain and things. And those are all things that we work with in sex therapy. There are experiences that are very much like part of the core themes of the work that sex therapists do. But sexual well-being and sexual health is broader than that. There are all of the psychological elements of our sexuality that aren't necessarily connected to bodies and bodily function, that are connected rather to our sexual identities, our desires and fantasies and kinks and preferences that we might have, and simultaneously feel shame or feel discomfort or fear or anxiety about having. We might find that our sexuality and our gender identity are interacting within us in a way that is distressing, and where therapy can be supportive and clarifying. There's so much around the way that we relate to sex, what we are seeking from sexual intimacy with other people and with ourselves, how we relate to our sexuality, that can manifest in ways that are self-destructive or harmful or feel out of control. Like people present with kind of compulsive behavior that is sexual in ways that sex therapy specifically can work well to navigate and support. So often we see people who are anxious around their like performance sexually and relationally, their bodies. We are, you know, the product of our environments, our relational and cultural environments, as well as our physical, biological, like bodily experiences. And those environments give us very strong, very relentless messaging around what counts as desirable, what counts as acceptable, what counts as normal. And this like social context, the soup we're all swimming in around sexual ideas and values and morals can seep through and inform how we relate to ourselves and our partners and other people. And so sex therapy is as much about exploring those narratives and values and morals and how they are informing how we experience sexuality and how we approach sex as any of the biological things. And I suppose the other like big like strand in sex therapy is around relationships and intimate partner therapy, where it's such an intense kind of a relationship when we bring our sexualities that are so often such a core part of ourselves, and so like vulnerable to rejection or vulnerable to feeling unacceptable, these like kind of core emotional needs that we seek to get met through sexual relationships. And when we form close attachments, when we don't have tools to navigate conflict, tools to navigate discrepancy of desire, or like ruptures and betrayals, and these are this kind of like sticky and difficult situation is where sex therapy and relationship therapy can really support and hold people. I'm trying to think if I've forgotten any major thing.
Let's leave it there. I think that kind of gives us a nice overview of the kind of stuff that you would do. But I'm like wondering specifically, if I come in and I say I have I'm questioning, am I queer? Will you be able to tell me if I'm queer?
Absolutely not. No, I will not be administering sexual orientations to clients. I also will not be seeking to change them. That's something that people often present to sex therapy with, saying, I have this desire, I have this orientation, I have these fantasies, and I don't want them. Can you get rid of them? And the answer is no. I and I and therapists generally and other people do not have the power, thankfully, do not have the power to change what people feel drawn towards and erotically excited by. And I say thankfully because I think that that desire to change our sexual preferences and orientations is rooted in the social context that shames and stigmatizes, discriminates against certain identities and preferences. So when people feel that it is a bad thing to desire a particular gender, to desire a particular kind of sex, then it's natural that they'd want to rid themselves of that. And what we can absolutely work with, and what is a really important part of the work that sex therapists do, is to support clients to get to a point of acceptance, if not celebration, of their own sexuality, whatever it is. We can't change the sexuality, but we can work with how we relate to it.
Right. Okay, that was well answered, I think. Yeah, especially considering, I mean, we in South Africa, we're such a diverse community, and we have so many cultures, and so a lot of information, a lot of the cultural norms, sometimes they do shape, our relationship with our own sexuality. So, yeah, definitely, like, I think sexuality, gender identities are kind of at the fore right now in terms of conversations, but also in terms of the I'd say cultural and religious, not all cultures, not all religions, but cultural and religious pressures for people to be a particular type and to have sexuality of a certain type. So
Absolutely.
thank you. Yeah. Was there anything else? Or what came up to mind just now?
You reminded me of the model of sexuality that I use and understand, which is the psychosocial one, where we've got the biological elements that inform our sexuality, bodies, hormones, reproductive organs, so on. We've got the psychological, our thoughts and feelings and emotions and preferences and desires, and how we relate to our sexuality. And the social, what have we been taught about sex? What have we been taught is normal? What have we been taught is acceptable? How do we have sex? What's our relationships like with the people who we care about, who we're intimate with, and what do they think, what their values? And all of these strands come together, and it's really we do ourselves a disservice if we ever undermine the role that the social plays in sexuality, and so much. I so often find myself doing kind of thought experiments with clients of, imagine a world where this other, like, what would be different in how you're feeling, in the shame, in the anxiety, if it was a different environment, because sometimes it's hard to see to see it and recognize it because it's everywhere,
Right.
It's like the air we breathe.
Yeah. So let's dive right into then. What would a typical session with you look like?
So at the Triangle Project offices, which I'm very excited to come and embed myself in, we will meet. I will greet you, and when we first start working together, we will go through the initial assessment. And this is a list of questions about general health and mental health and sexual experiences and your relational, social context and life, to build a picture of what's happening for you, where you're at in life in general, and with a particular sexual issue that you're seeking to work on therapeutically. And none of those questions are a have to answer. I think I irritate my clients by how frequently I caveat that they don't have to answer questions they don't want. And that typically takes 1 or 2 sessions to kind of get through that and make sure there's not rushing. And also to invite questions. So I make sure that there's space and time for me to answer any questions that clients have. And then once that picture has been built up and we've kind of ruled out any biological factors, you know, some presentations can be really like closely linked to particular medications or health conditions. And so we don't want to start going in the deep end and talking about all of the psychological and social things for an issue without making sure that it's not because of a pill someone's taking that is not, you know, that, so you rule out the biological. And then with the, like, when we're really in the flow of it and the assessment's finished and we're working on the problem or problems that somebody is wanting to work with, a typical session is a 1 hour long and will massively depend on each client, because as I said, it is a collaborative thing. It's not something that I don't have a formula that I come with and that we're going to follow through. Rather, I will check in and ask how they're doing and how their week's going, or if there was I'll ask, how did the last week's session land for you? Is there anything left over? Did anything come up for you? If there was a particular question or idea that we agreed would be useful to reflect on or like journal about or just ponder, I'll say, how was that? And if it was, oh, I forgot about that as I left the room last week, that's also okay. And we can explore in different ways. We can just discuss things verbally. We can like use different kind of thought experiments or activities, or like physically drawing things if people find that useful or find that intriguing or comforting to do in these different ways. And there's a kind of spectrum in sex therapy of the kind of interventions or the kind of directions that we could go in a session. My tutor used the analogy of a swimming pool where there's the deep end and the shallow end. And with every sexual thing that someone wants to talk about, we can go into the deep end. We can go into the like, right, let's talk about the like emotion and what happened in the past and the experience, childhood, and like really like root down into it. And that can be really powerful and transformative work. And or we can go into shallow end and be like, okay, what practical steps might be helpful right now to change the like consequences of what's going on in the deep end? What can shift, or what kind of like, you know, oh, with this kind of app to track things like around erectile unreliable directions, like, oh, there's this thing, or here's some psychoeducation, here are some resources, here's an activity we can do that might shift how you are aware or think about that problem. And what I find is most I'm trying to avoid this block of sunlight.
That's all right.
This hemisphere, but right here. Yeah, I think what works best is when we like move between both. So there can be the more tangible and immediately transformative, like shallower end things, and the more like kind of like longer term shifting of what's happening like underneath the water's surface. And so it will be decided upon by what the client wants and is comfortable with, finds useful, but that's the kind of vibe that
So I couldn't come in for a one session and you heal me, solve my problems.
I would kind of love that. That would be very rewarding work, I think, if that was available as a career path. I could really pat myself on the back, couldn't I? Unfortunately, that's not really how change tends to happen, and certainly not why. So the collaborative approach also means that it's not something that I can do to or for a client. The role of a therapist, as I see it and as I practice, is to facilitate and support a client to shift and change in ways that empower and lessen distress and expand awareness. It's not that I can fix somebody else's problems. It's not my place to, I don't have the right to, I don't have that kind of control, because clients are autonomous individuals who are in control of their lives in ways that mean that it could only ever be like a kind of coercive and unhealthy thing for me to be doing things to them. Rather, it's about like helping, supporting clients to actualize their like own power and own resources with sufficient support and guidance. And so the degree to which I would direct or be proactive in suggesting things, again, depends on whether that's something clients like. Some clients find that really resistant well and will go, who do you think I didn't ask you, stop telling me what to do, which is fair. And that's the kind of dynamic where what is wanted is much more like reflective and gentle and about like really actively listening and validating and hearing. And then there are some clients going, I got friends for that and family for that, and I am here and I want some like insight, give me something to do, give me an activity. And the mode, the kind of therapy that I'm trained in is called pluralism, and that is about having the flexibility to work in ways that individual clients would find most useful in that range. I don't have a one size fits all practice.
And how long then would the typical let's say working relationship be? So how many sessions ideally, or what is suggested, as a period of engaging with a psychosexual therapist?
Well, it again depends on the client. Within reason, I don't think anyone suggests that it's the best thing to do to spend 5 years doing sex therapy weekly. But in this context, because I'm leaving in 3 months, we have a time constraint on the work that we can do, which is not something that I'm used to. I'm used to a more open-ended approach. And so it's something that I think there's a lot of scope for really really good work in 8, 10, 12 sessions. And I think there's a possibility that timeline will mean that it's really focused and will really can be really intentional and really focused.
Direct,
as a sense. But I think that's not to say that for some people 6 sessions feels like really good. They've like got what they wanted from it, and it feels like a contained bit of work that's been done. For other people, 12 sessions is going to feel like it's barely scratched the surface, and that's also okay, because it's not I'm not the only sex therapist available, and so it could be something that opens the door and facilitates someone realizing that this is something that they'd like to pursue longer term, in a way that they can more sustainably, because there's many of us will have a lot to work with, a lot.
And I mean, that trust building also takes time. If perhaps somebody hasn't ever been in a counseling or therapy session, and that might take time for them to open up about some of these shameful things or these fantasies or problems that they may have. So
that's not going to get rushed because of the timeline. I would rather spend fewer sessions in the kind of thick of the issue or the problem than to spend all 12 sessions trying to talk about that, because there's not time to develop trust, but clients withholding and feeling distrustful or overwhelmed. That's essential for anything useful to get done, I think.
Sure. So for those people that maybe aren't going to be able to then see you in the 3 months that you're going to be here, what resources can people start reading? to maybe improve communication in their relationships, or to better understand their bodies and their boundaries and their sexual needs. Yeah, and just to kind of start the journey of sexual health and well-being.
Well, I will share with you to post online my kind of collection of resources, because there are many over the years of being obsessed with sex and queer sexuality and kink and so on. I've just accumulated a lot of ideas and websites and podcasts and blogs and so on. But some of my absolute favorites that I feel like would be useful and relevant to everyone. Maybe I lack imagination, but they really just feel excellent and that everyone should read them and engage. There's a writer called Meg John Barker, an English sex and relationships educator and psychologist, who is non-binary and queer, and they write zines and record a podcast, and they've written a whole load of books, and it's all about queer sexuality, mental health, relationships, pleasure, and so much of what they offer is really accessible to like a diverse range of people from lots of different ages and sexualities and experiences. Really resonate with their work, and it's in so many different formats. You know, those of us who have a shorter attention span, such as myself, love a zine. Books, it takes me a long time to get through, so the fact that there's a zine or a podcast is really helpful. In terms of like queer sex ed, very few of us got any good sex ed. I don't know anyone who queer sex ed, and so there's a website I really like called Oh Joy Sex Toy, which is a like treasure trove of resources in the form of like comics and cartoons, where there's like loads of sex education for things like how to have different types of sex in a way that is safe, how to explore fantasies, how to communicate certain things. It's fab. Yeah, those I'll leave it there. These two of my faves.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you would like anybody watching this, and anybody who's potentially thinking about coming for a session, is there anything you'd like them to know?
I think the only other thing I'd say is that you are most welcome to come and try it out. You know, we do not have to, you're not committing to loads of sessions. You can come and we can chat and meet, and you can just get a sense of me and of what the space is like and of what it feels like to chat, without signing on any dotted lines that you're going to come and talk to me about something that feels really private and really soft and sensitive. This is not, there isn't that kind of expectation, and I really understand what it can be like, especially as a first-time client. Therapists, as Viwe, you'll know, we have to be clients. We can't just rock up and pretend that we know what's what, without having done a lot of sitting on the other side. And I remember being a client and the weirdness and anxiety and guardedness that I had the first time, and that I still sometimes bring in ongoing therapy. And that's something I relate to and see, and don't expect people to feel comfortable and happy about being in that space, and just encourage you, if you can and would like to like take the plunge and come and see if it works for you. And if it doesn't, totally fine. And if it does, then hopefully that will like bring you benefit in your life.
Amazing. And the sessions are going to be free.
That's also, excellent. It's access to psychotherapeutic care is unfortunately like so privileged most of the time. And so having psychotherapy that is available for everyone without any financial barriers is so great. And I suppose you've got me wittering, but this is actually something I was going to say right at the beginning and then forgotten.
Sure.
will acknowledge in person with clients when it's relevant. But whilst I'm part of the queer community and have my family in South Africa, in Athlone, just around the corner, obviously I'm English and I only speak English and have this my gender identity and my cultural heritage and my ethnicity all could mean that it feels especially inaccessible, or it might feel more uncomfortable, or more like there's a greater distance of understanding around the cultural norms, around language, around religion. And so I would say that I'm not uncomfortable in naming that and in inviting a discussion about how that sits with clients in this space, like how what can we do to facilitate mutual understanding, what can we do to ensure that this space feels as comfortable as possible given the potential racial or religious or cultural differences between us. I really encourage that into the space as well.
Amazing. Amazing. Yes. I mean, again, not like, kind of taking us back to that discussion where we had about creating a safer space or a space of non-judgment. It's also about recognizing the things that we bring into the space as therapists, as clients, So yeah, thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. So I think
Thank you
that
so
is all from me.
I really
That is
appreciate
all
you taking
from me.
the time to chat, and I'm so excited to come and join the team at the Triangle Project for a little while.
Yes, I'm so excited for all the amazing things to come. All right, so I am gonna stop the recording now, and then we can maybe just check in a little bit. Stop the recording. Okay.